This is Bharat FM.
बजेगा भारत, झूमेगा भारत.
ये है भारत FM.
बजेगा भारत, झूमेगा भारत.
Namaskar, Sat Sri Akal, welcome and adab. You are listening to Bharat FM, a one-of-its-kind, multilingual, eclectic provider of entertainment, information and news to Indian Americans. Headquartered in Cincinnati, Ohio, Bharat FM airs shows out of Cincinnati, Chicago and Phoenix. We take pleasure in our ability to cater to your bhakti, chusti, sfurti, shakti and masti needs with our audio and visual shows. Check out bharatfm.com for our online program schedule and archives. I'm sure the content will definitely tickle your senses. Tune in via the 24-hour web streaming on bharatfm.com or via the Bharat FM app. More information can be procured at 513-488-5070.
Hi everyone, my name is Varshini. Welcome back to Things We Carry with Bharat FM and Saas for Cause. I am so excited to be speaking to Dr. Amit. He's today, and as always, again, thanking Saas for Cause and Bharat FM. Saas for Cause is currently doing a ton of outreach work with the South Asian community for COVID relief. So if you or anyone you know is affected by COVID or needs any help, please reach out to them and they're more than happy to connect you to a ton of resources, regardless of your background. So again, a huge welcome to Dr. Amit Dhingra. I'm going to throw it to you to introduce yourself.
Well, thank you, Varshini, for having me. And it's actually an honor, to be here in your show. I've heard so many good things about it. And so my name is Amit Dhingra. I am originally from Delhi, born in India, and have been here a little over 20 years now. And I'm a practicing pulmonologist here in Phoenix, Arizona. I've been here about 10 years now. So work in a private practice and try to do a little bit every day. So
yeah. I mean, you showed up wearing a tie initially, and I'm in a hoodie, so.
So you made me take it off because I was looking too formal, and I just finished work. So I said, okay, want to relax a little bit, so I took it off.
And this is, as I was saying, tech industry formal, which is
yes, yeah, that's the generation gap we talk about.
All right, so getting into a bit of your background. Also, is it just me or can you hear an echo when I'm talking?
There is a little bit of echo.
I wonder why that is. Hopefully it's not too bad, but maybe we can switch off. So when I'm talking, maybe you can mute, and then when you're speaking, I'll mute, and hopefully that'll fix the issue.
Okay, so do you want me to click mute when you're talking?
Yes.
Right.
This is what goes on live show. This is how we troubleshoot. So I would love for you to tell us, I know you said that you're in Phoenix, Arizona. You've been here for the last 10 years practicing. Can you tell us a little bit about your immigration story, when you came to this country, and just a little bit of background about how you grew up and what that transition was like moving here?
So I've been in Phoenix for 10 years, but I've been in the US for a little over 20 years. And born in New Delhi, grew up there. I still call it my hometown. And I still have my close family back home. My dad's there. My sister's actually in Bangalore. She's into animation. But all my close family members are there. My cousins are actually all scattered all over the world, starting from Singapore to Australia, UK, Canada, US, everywhere. So went to school in New Delhi, of course, graduated. I was initially in Air Force School and then went to DPS, which is a pretty famous school in India or in Delhi, actually. And then went to Armed Forces Medical College for my medical school, and that was back in '93. Finished graduation '98, did my internship, came back to Delhi for that. I was at Safdarjung Hospital for a year. And then I started preparing for life ahead. So this was one of the options. And my aunt, who's in New York, she's been here since 1977, and she put that idea into my head. And my mom was like, "Exam, they give it and try and see how it goes." And now here we are, in 2021, and I'm sitting thanks to those women in my life, and I have to thank them, So that's in a nutshell.
I would love to know, so going into just like becoming a doctor and all of that, did you always have this calling? Like, when did you know that this was it for you? Because I think compared to other fields, like you need to have such a dedication and a commitment to following through with the type of schooling and intensity and rigor that this field requires of you. So where did you find that? Like, what was your first inspiration to go into this?
So the inspiration for me was my mother, because she actually always wanted to be a physician. And I don't know whether uh, in the when she was going to graduation in the 1970s, women doing too much was kind of frowned upon. And her dad, my Nanaji, was a doctor, her physician. So he was actually a influence on her and me. And that was also one of the reasons why I went into this. But she always wanted to be a physician. So when I was growing up, I used to hear that a lot. And she used to tell me, it's like, I couldn't do it. Maybe you can do it. So that kind of got me into, more into science. And I guess I was good at it. And when I realized that, when things come easy to you, you say, okay, let's give it a shot and see how it goes. And when when your biology comes easy to you, this is a line you want to look at. You can be a microbiologist, or you can be a scientist, a biochemist, you can be a pharmacist. There's so many different, a nurse, but I guess I could say a strong influence from my mom. And, thanks to all of the good wishers around me, that I went through it and came out. So
That's amazing. And very early on, you already credited the strong women in your life. And I really appreciate that. I will say, I think it's great to give credit where it's due. And it's also, I think a lot of times, especially being South Asian, our parents like realize their dreams through us. I think that's a very common theme. And I think one that can produce like amazing results. Like now you are this incredible doctor, you are changing so many lives and helping people. And at other times it can be, I've at least seen in my generation, a big burden that I feel like some of my friends and people that I know have to carry. So I'm so glad in your case, it's something where it like propelled you in a direction you were already naturally headed in.
So I have to say, the strong women in my life, it never ended. So it's still ongoing. It's like I started off with my mother and my grandmother, my mom's mom. I mean, she's still alive. God bless her. She's in her 90s, almost 95. And, went on with my wife now, and, my sister, and I have a daughter now. So, and all of them are strong personalities. So, the influence goes on. So it's always, we men like to always take credit, but unfortunately, that's not true. It's always the strong women in your life who shape you.
Okay, I love that. I'm completely obsessed with that. And I think more South Asian men, if they just like admit that freely, I think we'll all be in a better place, because I think women are in South Asian families, especially many times in the background, but they're the ones who are having conversations with their brothers, with their husbands, whatever, in the background. And even if they're not the one who at the end of the day are getting the credit for things or are going out themselves and having the career following whatever, that is like a very silent backbone, I feel like, of our society. And I see, like, even in my own family, my grandmother, who supported my grandfather through all of his endeavors as an engineer, and now he's built temples and monuments and structures, and he's like, yes, I did that, but like I couldn't have done that without your grandmother and like the ideas that she gave me too. So I think, yeah, South Asian women have just been a very like strong backbone to a lot of things that go on. And I want to ask you, when you moved to this country, you said your aunt gave you that kind of like idea, plant that seed in your head. Did you say she was already here? Was she someone that you kind of like leaned on when you first moved to the US?
Absolutely, and she's still here, and she's actually a neonatologist, practicing neonatologist at Columbia University in New York City. And yeah, she's still. I actually lived with her in her house for about a year. Thank God for that. Otherwise, I would have been on the street. But yes, that gave me the impetus, the springboard to go and do my whatever I needed to. But then I had a home to come back to. And that's so important because, when you come to a new place, and believe it or not, I had never left India before that. So it was like, oh, get to know a new land, get to know new faces, the way of the world, and to have a close family member give you the guidance and the support, that's, you can't put that in words.
Yeah, I feel like it's invaluable, especially again, going through what you had to in this country to become like a doctor and like settle down. I think that's also a really difficult time. I think back to like the stories my dad tells me of coming to grad school in the US, in Oklahoma, from being from Madras, Chennai, where he's never seen snow. That's not a thing. And then he's talking about trudging through the snow to go to the engineering lab at like super early in the morning and all of this stuff. And he used to tell me, like, there were, you couldn't like just text your parents. You had to like call them, and then you'd have to be like, oh, this is like a long distance call. And it becomes so difficult to feel connected to home. So the fact that your aunt was here and you get to like eat a home cooked meal and like be with someone who's also in the same field as you, that I feel like is just priceless. So that's wonderful that she was like that built-in community.
Yeah, it was priceless because, you have someone who can bounce ideas off as well. You can talk, like you said, and you have family. I mean, you go to family gatherings and you have family and you feel at home. But going back to that comment about snow, that's what I did for the first 3 or 4 years when I was here. I actually, after about a year, I actually moved up north close to Syracuse for my residency, and I used to shovel snow for 6 months out of a whole year. And that was fun, but not fun. It's not something I want to do again. If I do it right now, it'll probably break my back. But it's an experience, and I think that's what makes you who you are. I think anything in life, whether where you're born, where you grow up, what you go through, that's what really makes who you are and what you learn and what propels you forward. So that's very important to remember where you came from and to carry it with you.
And in those moments where you're doing things like shoveling snow and you're going through all of this, obviously you have your aunt right there. But I feel like there are times, even when I was away at school, and I didn't go very far away from my parents to go to school or anything. I stayed in Southern California, but I feel like you hear like the voice of like, your mom telling you, oh, like, don't put your wet towel on the bed, like just like things like that. And just random memories will start coming to you. And of course, there are the things like, this is how much your dal to water ratio should be and all of that stuff. But more importantly, those like life lessons that maybe when your mom or your parents were telling you those things, what were the lessons that just kept coming back to you in those like difficult moments?
So I'll tell you, I've been lucky to have very few difficult moments. I mean, in fact, I've been blessed. Whenever I look at my life and I see what people go through on a daily basis, I can hardly say that I had really difficult moments or maybe because my parents prepared me for it, because we were from a very humble upbringing, grew up in a 2-room house, not a lot of facilities or toys, and you knew how to save things and not waste things. So you felt that whatever you have now is way more than what you ever had in your life. So you're thankful for that. So maybe it's a different perspective. Well, like you're saying, difficult moments. For me, it wasn't difficult. It was like, okay, this is already, I've been through all of these. This is not a big deal. But like I said, discipline is what was instilled not only by my parents, both my parents and my grandparents, but also because I was in the Armed Forces Medical School. So it was like being in the Army. So you're a cadet, and there's like, things are done in a certain way, and you can't go out of line. And I think that kept me going, because I think discipline helps you go through the tough times in your life. And whether you make a bed, you don't make a bed, or other things in life, how you deal with people on a daily basis, how you dress up, simple things, that makes a big difference. You don't realize initially when you're growing up, but then you're like, oh yeah, it does. It helps.
And I think discipline in the industry I'm in, I work with a lot of like really creative people, and like I've had to work with people who basically like create content. And that's one thing I always tell them, like you can have like one viral video, you can have one thing that goes really viral, but that doesn't make a career, right? It's showing up the next day after the thing that went viral yesterday, it's all over, it's done, right? People are over it, they've moved on to the next thing. It's showing up the next day and being like, okay, what's the next idea I have? What's the next one that I have? And I think that discipline will carry you through moments of when you don't have inspiration, because inspiration is very flippant. Like it comes, it goes, you feel it some days, you don't feel it some days, but it's about like showing up every single day. And truly, 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 half the battle is showing up. That's one thing I realized is just show up, and like every day show up, whether it's for 15 minutes or whatever it may be. And I think it's so true. I think discipline is something that like if you've had it instilled in you when you're very young, you are very fortunate, because as I get older, I'm like, oh man, I can see how if I had not had that growing up, I could just really let things slip by the wayside.
Can you talk to my daughter? She won't listen to me. Maybe she'll listen to you now. And I'd like to add something to discipline, is hard work, is what was instilled. And I think to a great extent, most professionals coming from India, discipline and hard work is kind of instilled, because that's how you grow up. Because most of we are growing up in a sort of not very privileged household. Because if you are privileged, you're probably not looking to go do more and you're already happy where you are. But when you're looking for more, and so you're already, it's like a Darwin's theory of survival of the fittest. You're studying more or you're doing more, and then if you don't do hard work and you're not disciplined about it, and that's true for any profession in life, you're not going to go far. And I think, like you said, showing up every day and doing the boring things which feel boring, but in the end it pays off. But hard work, do your work to the best you can, whether it's making burgers at McDonald's, or being the usher at Walmart, or being a cleaning person, or being a physician, or being an IT person, or a musician. Whatever you do, whether you are not going to do it for the rest of your life, if you feel, oh, this is just a short-term thing, but just do it to the best of your ability and use it as a stepping stone, because when you do it well, you're appreciated, and then you get an opportunity which moves you forward.
Yes, I could not agree more. It's not like the big things that you do. It's like all the little tiny things. And my dad always says this, and it's something I always come back to. He's like, luck is just preparation and opportunity. When they meet, that's what people call luck. And it's really like, people say you're at the right time at the right place, but if you didn't have that talent to begin with, if you hadn't been building that foundation, that background, it's not going to matter if Bill Gates hands you like, I don't know, whatever, half of his divorce money. You're still not going to be able to do anything with it. Like,
can I get some of that money and then I could retire? Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's like the biggest thing is that it's all the small things. And I'm sure in the field that you've been in, the line of study that you've pursued, that's the truest thing. You have to build all of your knowledge on those like basic biology building blocks that you learned in high school. And you're like, let me learn this well, which by the way, I did not, which is why I'm not in that field. But you have to like, it's like building upon every little thing that you've done. It doesn't come out of nowhere.
Don't ever underestimate what you're doing, because what you're doing is a different thing, and you're good at it, and you're having fun, and that's what matters. Coming from India in particular, you have a feeling of, oh, if you're not an engineer or a physician, you're like, who are you? And that is one of the drawbacks in our South Asian community and society. I feel that sometimes, as physicians, we are given way too much importance and way too much value. And the other ones are just, oh, you're a taxi driver, or you just work here, or IT. Oh, really? Okay. It's okay. It's not okay. It's good, actually, because, they are working hard and not just IT or anyone, but they are doing everything to the best of their ability to what they can. And that's a value in itself.
And like you said, I think it's like about walking in the gifts that you have, walking in like the things that you're good at, and pursuing that is going to take you so much further. And I like have family members, cousins, where I'm like, oh, this person is like a writer. This person is a musician. And if you let them do that, they would be successful. And my parents have always told me, we'd rather you, and it's most people that I talk to, they're like, I don't even understand what you do, but you seem to be doing well. And I'm like, thank you so much. But my parents are like, I'd rather see you excelling at what you do now than being a terrible engineer or like a terrible doctor, God forbid, because that's going to have like real life consequences on people. But I think it's really humbling and amazing to hear you say, like, yeah, we shouldn't put certain professions on a pedestal over others. And I think also being South Asian, a lot of times you really over-index your self-worth to the job that you have or the career that you're following or the school that you're going to. And if you ever ask me to give your daughter life advice, I don't know if you'll want that, because the thing that I always say is, the thing I've always said is like, say yes to all the things that you're interested in. It's not like this is the career path. Life is like chess, not checkers. It's not like that straightforward. And the stuff that you don't plan for is the stuff that's actually going to like change your life and get you to where you want to be.
No, I don't think she needs any more advice. I think between me and my wife, we give her enough advice. I was just kidding. She's right now preparing for her final comps. She's in 6th grade. And God bless her, she's doing a good job of it, and she's stressed out, and it just brings me back to where I was, her age, and it's frightening. Sometimes it's like, oh, what am I going to do? How am I going to get through this? And she's a good kid; she'll be fine. Yeah.
And I mean, as like a parent, as someone who's come from like a line of physicians, do you see that in her, or like how have you kind of instilled everything that's made you who you are as a parent? And how do you like keep that like distance of like, maybe she doesn't want to do this, maybe she wants to do something else?
So I'd like to correct you on that. I am not from a line of physicians. My grandfather was the only physician in the family before I became one. And we are a family of at least 50 to 60 people. And we have MBAs, and my father is an electrical engineer. My mom was a teacher, and my sister is into animation. So to be honest with you, we've actually told her from day one, we don't want you to pick anything. We want you to go into anything you want, but do it well. We put her into piano classes. She does arts. We play with her. She is into martial arts. All thanks to my wife. She picks all these things, and she's like, okay, we're going to put you into martial arts. Then I go play basketball with her. I take her out biking. So whatever she wants to excel in, but that thing has to click inside you. You can't force anyone into something, because then they're, like you said, you won't be a good physician or a good engineer if your heart is not in it.
And I think the fact that she has that freedom is amazing. And I think like I'm seeing more and more like parents and my aunts and uncles who are having kids just like allowing their kids to do that. And I think that's amazing because I know, so I'm 25, and the people who are like in my generation, I feel like we're maybe the last group where it's like half and half, where parents are like kind of stressed, but now they're like, okay, like there seem to be just so many more options than we ever thought. So that's like wonderful that you're just letting her explore. I think that's the coolest thing. And speaking as someone who my parents put me in the most random classes growing up, like random, like I did tap dancing, I was terrible at taekwondo. I think it's like actually builds such a personality for you where you can like laugh at all these things. And so those are like the great things that you've learned that you want to carry on. What, in your experience, both like as a doctor and just like as a person in society, being Indian, what are the things that you see in our community that you're like, you know, this is not helping us move forward as a group, whether that's affecting our like actual physical health or just like the way we connect to each other and how we like raise future generations? Is there anything that stands out?
You mean the South Asian community here in the US or back home in India? Which you mean?
Honestly, both. If you have one or the other that kind of like stands out to you.
I think as far as what I've seen in the South Asian community here in the US, and that's not just true about our community, but it's for any like Italian or Greek or, you know, Muslim community. We tend to rally around our own people, but sometimes forget to amalgamate, because we have to remember that we are not in India anymore. We've chosen a different place, but we have to take it as ours. So we kind of take it as ours, but then we go back to our roots. And sometimes there's this selfishness that comes in, and especially sometimes there's an elitist attitude, I feel, that comes out, which rubs off in the wrong way. And as a community, we are rough, not like, you know, the way we dress, but I think sometimes the way we come across. So those are the things that, you know, don't come off well. So people understand us not so well, or misunderstand us and take us, you know, in the wrong way. And there's a bridge, you know, that we have to pass, or we have to cross, so to speak, for the community here. As far as back home in India, it actually really disappoints me, especially with what I'm seeing right now, and doesn't amaze me at all. I'm not surprised, because the sheen is right on the top. You know, people say, "Oh, India is doing so well. There's so much money and there's so much advancement." And I feel that when you want to see advancement and you want to see wealth, you actually go to the poorest parts of the country and you see how they are doing, and that'll tell you how rich the place is. And India is the same as it was 40 years ago. It's, you know, people can dispute that, but there are people who still don't have access to clean drinking water, proper toilets, roads. If you can't have that basic facilities, amenities for every single person, simple medical, you know, dispensaries or hospitals, how do you call that advancement? So that's my 2 cents.
I completely agree with you first about like what we've built here. I feel like every guest that I've had of the like 6 or 7 in the last few months that I've been doing this, everyone has said like, you know, we left India to build something different here, but in so many ways we've taken that like that, you know, that elitism and that judgment, and we've just transported it right from there here. And like you said, your immigration story, your coming to this country was not marked by like intense difficulty or anything like that. And I think we forget sometimes that that's not the case for everyone. Like some people really, really struggled when they came here, and to have what they have now is a huge deal. And you can't judge it by these like surface level things. So I think that's so true. And I think if we were just like kinder, first of all, to each other, I think we'd also be able to be kinder to other minority groups in this country who are facing similar things. Because yeah, we definitely turn inwards. We definitely are like, let me just take care of my small group, my like family friend circle first. And we forget to like also include other people who are immigrants who are struggling in the same way. And in terms of like what's going on in India right now, and the exact point that you said about you have to go to the poorest parts of the country to see like how that person is doing, because that is the everyday person. Like it's not, and I really love how you phrase that, like the sheen is just at the top. It really is just at the top. Like the wealthy are getting wealthier, the gaps are getting bigger. Like you see like the Ambani house right next to like some of the poorest places in the world, and you can't say that this is progress. Like you can't say that with like a clean conscience.
So unfortunately, what happened was that when these things came into India, the capitalism, so to speak, and the all the industrial, the new industries, and the foreign capital, and all of that, India had already gone through this 40, 50 years of corruption, which had seeped into every strata of society. And that had eaten it from inside like a termite. So when they start comparing themselves to China and US, they don't realize that, well, China is a completely different example. I wouldn't want to give an example of China because that's an authoritarian and control environment. But at least the basic person, the poor man is better off over there, I think, as compared to India. Maybe not. But here, when you come and you see in the Western world, and you go out and you see how a common man lives and how they take care of each other, it actually puts me to shame to see what is happening back home in India. It's kind of shameful. And then, yes, I mean, people even here are getting richer by the day, but at the same time, there is a certain level of integrity to life here. People value life, one another. And that I don't see over there. I mean, it's just the value of life is not there.
It's very heartbreaking. And I think this COVID crisis has brought it into light. And you always hope that people will wake up. But I think our memory, it seems like we have short-term memory loss. I feel like once COVID is over, we're going to go back to being as unsafe as we were before, as like careless as we were before. And I hope people realize this, because I have friends who I either met in college or when we moved back to India very briefly when I was younger. I still keep in contact with them. We're all connected on Instagram. I've seen so many people there who are of a higher socioeconomic level even post like, oh, my friend's grandmother or my grandmother or my aunt needs like a hospital bed. Does anyone have any leads? And I'm like, this is what, some of the poorest people in the country go through every single day. Like, this is not a new struggle to them. And now it only matters because you have a cell phone. You're able to do this. You're able to find resources. Imagine the people, well, first of all, there are more cell phones than toilets in the world. So that's not a great example. That's actually a fun statistic. But I don't think people realize that this is what someone goes through on a daily basis there, and how much they have to like essentially beg, borrow, and steal to get basic care, let alone COVID care.
I mean, I think that about 20-30% of the population are daily wage earners, because if they don't work, they don't eat. Their family goes hungry that day. So that statistic in itself is disgusting, to be honest with you. How can you have a country who thinks that they are rich and prosperous, have people, at least maybe 30% of the population below poverty line, and daily wage earners who cannot provide 2 square meals to their family? So I don't see that as richness.
It definitely isn't. And I think I have to say, even in the US, at least in LA, my parents say this all the time. Since they got to this country, I think, or to this city, I think they moved here in like 1996, 97. Since then, I mean, Skid Row, any freeway interpass, they're like, there are so many people who are houseless. There's so many people who can't get basic care. And this is supposed to be a country where that doesn't happen. Like this country, especially leadership, acts like all these horrible problems of, homelessness, of lack of healthcare. They assume that it only happens in other countries, but I feel like we need to also look here and be like, well, the people here aren't doing that great as well. And I think there needs to be that sense of like, obviously like think globally, act locally, whatever it may be. I think there needs to be that sense here too, where it's like nobody can point fingers, because even this country that really prides itself on being immune to those issues, like genuinely, it's just horrible to see, having been in LA for as long as we have.
Unfortunately, the politics has finally caught up and it's seeping into a common man's life and affecting that. And you can see that. And I think California is the stark example of a lot of red tape and a lot of hindrances, and there's a push and pull happening from both sides, and people get caught in the middle. And also it's a result of a little bit of overpopulation, because if you see how densely populated California is, and that's when you get problems. How, when you have dense population, you have resources, people, and that's when this happens.
And I also wanted to ask you, this is like slightly shifting gears, but in terms of like how this affects like the actual like quality of life and health of a population, when you're treating, I assume you have a very diverse like patient group and everything, but have you been able to see kind of patterns in the South Asian patients that you treat, and like what you see as kind of the standard problems that we continue to deal with as a community, even like in the US here?
So Phoenix is a very unique market in terms of that the South Asian community that I deal with. First of all, it's a very small percentage. It's not as big as LA. I mean, New York is number one, and then California. So whatever South Asian community patients I've had, most of them are very well educated, from good families, good insurance. So the socioeconomic status is not a big factor in the health. But yes, we do have people, I've heard from my friends, who come in, either they just landed from India or they are been here, they maybe work in a temple, and they need help. And there are especially women who are left alone in various circumstances. And you could probably talk to that, and I think Payal and the Sahas organization. But I mean, women are the ones that are most vulnerable, especially when they come to a new place, and easily taken advantage of. So yes, we do see that, we hear about that. I personally haven't dealt with that a lot, but yes, I've heard of it from friends, definitely, yeah.
And I think, like you said, for patients to like advocate for themselves, I feel like I have a friend who is a grad student and has worked at Planned Parenthood, and she's in global women's health and like reproductive health. That's what she talks about a lot. And she says the exact same thing that you do. Is I think the best example of this is Serena Williams, world's #1 tennis player, almost died giving birth because people wouldn't take what she was saying seriously, and they wouldn't take her pain seriously. And she was like, something is wrong. And if someone with that level of access and power, once again, can almost come close to dying for something that should be as mundane now, not mundane, but like as commonplace as childbirth in the 21st century, I can't imagine what it's like being, a patient in this healthcare system who maybe doesn't have that much access, or maybe is not as familiar. And like you said, South Asians in general are a pretty vulnerable population. It's great that most of the people that you see are very well educated, but in general, like, how can this just like the medical field be more inclusive to patients like that who maybe don't understand some of these tests and reports and like the jargon that goes on?
Well, language barrier is another thing. And then they when they come in here, they have to learn a new language. Some of them, not all of them. But as medical professional, like you asked me, how can we help them out? Uh, the only way to do that is maybe through community outreach and especially through temples, because I know they wherever they are from, they migrate towards worship, places of worship, and that's where you could hopefully communicate with them through the community leaders, and then most of the physicians, as we know the temple leadership, so that's actually pretty good here in Phoenix, where the Gurdwara, and then there's a temple, and all of the physicians are actually involved in the in the board, and sometimes the daily functioning, and when there is help needed, we reach out. I mean, I've actually had a few. Actually, I'm glad you asked me this, because I've had a couple people who come in and I don't even charge them or anything. It's like, okay, you come in, I'll take care of you, but you need to be able to buy your own medicine. I don't sell medicine here, but at least I can see you and advise you and tell you what to do. So, and the network. I think the networking helps through the places of worship and other places. Yeah.
That is such a good point, that people, I feel like South Asian people always, congregate towards, centers of worship and places of worship. I think that's like the original community organizing that we've always done. So I just hope, like, I've talked to a couple of people who are in the healthcare field, whether it's like mental health or like, physicians. And that's what I think they keep saying, is that, a large majority of these people are a little bit out of touch with what these groups need. And the people who do serve these populations, they're stretched so thin. And it's at some point, it's like, how much more can you give? How much more empathy can you give when you're so overworked? So I think the fact that you're recommending this like community-based approach and to like understand these groups is so important, because I feel like in any industry, once you have a certain level of education or career expertise, you almost have that like ivory tower syndrome. You just become like slightly out of touch with what people actually want. And I think you can see that a lot in government, where you're like, okay, yeah, like student loan forgiveness is great, but there are people who like actually can't survive. So maybe raise the minimum wage, like, things like that, where it's like, what's important? I think it's important to stay in touch with that, like you're saying. And yeah, it's amazing that you at least are providing like a space for patients like that to be able to come in, expect that they can receive great healthcare and not be like petrified of that bill at the end of the session.
And that is the good thing about this country. When you come in here, you realize that sky's the limit, and they have resources and access at every level, but people just need to know how to take advantage of that. Not in a bad way, but in a good way. When those resources are available, you need to know how to access them, and most people don't even know that. So sometimes, community leadership, but when they come to us, we do have the knowledge after being here so many years that, okay, yes, this is what you can do, and this is how you can apply for your health insurance, or maybe, you can buy medication here cheaply. That's where, so I think the networking through the community leadership is the best that we can do.
Thank you so much. I have truly learned so much from this conversation. I got like an economics lesson, a lesson in like public health, I feel like. Thank you for sharing everything. Is there anything we have not covered in this time that you really want to let people know, whether they are South Asian in the US, whether it's someone in India, any like last thoughts and advice, anything we didn't cover?
Please vaccinate and wear a mask. Please. Not for yourself, for the other person.
And also today I saw this announcement that the CDC is saying if you're vaccinated, you don't need to wear a mask. I'm like, why did we say this to people? It's nuts.
So this, it's funny. I just had a conversation with the wife about an hour ago, and she was like, kind of the same thing. And I was trying to explain to her how this goes on. So CDC has been working on this for a long time, because they have these trials going on in people who have been fully vaccinated, and they look at to see if they can harbor the virus and can they transmit it. And the fact that they've come up with this announcement saying if you're fully vaccinated, you don't need to wear a mask unless it's required by that institution or whatever it is, that tells you that the complete vaccination with Pfizer or Moderna, which is predominant in this country, is keeping you from getting it in a getting severe disease. It's not like you're not going to get it. If you get it, you'll probably have mild symptoms. For the most part, you won't get it. But 95% of the time, you won't have severe disease. Secondly, you will probably not even transmit it because the moment you inhale the virus, your body clears it away right away. So you're not even, or shortly, so that you're not transmitting it. So that is what prompted them. This, they're also hoping would induce some people to go get the vaccine, because if you look at the numbers as of this morning, about 46% of the population had at least one shot and 35% had complete vaccination. So that's okay, but not great. We want to reach 80%, and that's not going to happen. We all know that. But even if we can do 60% plus, that'll be good.
Okay, that actually makes me feel so much better to hear from a doctor that that's what it is. Because my friends and I were like, what about these anti-vaxxers? What about these people who didn't get the vaccine? They're just going to be like, because people can just be like, yes, I got it. And then I guess I just don't believe in the humanity of some people that they would be honest about this, because this is the honor system, essentially, is what they're saying.
So that's going to happen. There will be people, and we have nutcases even without the pandemic. So people were going to do things what they want to do. You cannot prevent that. But at least there'll be some people who say, okay, if I want to take the mask off, I'm smart enough, so okay, maybe I'll go get a vaccine. But there'll be people who won't get a vaccine and they'll take their masks off. But this announcement tells you that at least you are safe. If you got your vaccine and you're not going to transmit, you are safe. They are taking their risk. That's their problem.
You know what? True. Anti-vaxxers, this one's for you. Like, this is on you. Good luck. Like, I was just trying to get a bagel on Saturday outside at this place. I was so hungry. And this woman was like, oh, I like your shoes. We kept talking. She seemed a little kooky, but I was like, maybe she's nice. We kept talking. And then she was like, did you get the vaccine? I was like, oh my God, here we go. Here we go. And she was like, I was like, yeah, I did. I got both. And she was like, ooh, I don't want it. And I was like, I don't want to have an anti-vax conversation at like 9 a.m. on a Saturday. I'm so not interested in this.
The unfortunate thing about the anti-vaxxers is that, they can have a conversation, but when you go a little deeper into their beliefs or whatever they want, they just don't have a solid argument about why they don't want to do it. And that's my only gripe, so to speak. It's like, okay, if you don't want to get it, can you give me a really good reason why? And then they don't have that, and then they just want to, either the argument goes like, the voice goes up and, people get angry, but they don't have a really intelligent conversation about why they don't want it. It's like, oh, I just don't want it. Well, that's not good enough, but if that's what it is,
Okay, you know what? I feel so much better after having this conversation, because I saw that announcement. I was like, oh my God. But yeah, exactly. They don't have a great reason. You want to take the risk, you take the risk. But at least in LA at this point, it seems like if you want a vaccine, you can get one. Like, it seems so much more accessible recently, at least.
That's all over the country right now. If you actually look at the CDC website or even the Johns Hopkins website, vaccines in every single state are available to anyone who wants it. And from probably next week onwards, the Pfizer vaccine will be available for 12 to 15-year-olds. So my daughter should be in line. Yay, but she won't like it.
Well, thank you so much. That is a relief to hear. And let's hope this is like people swiftly get their vaccines. We all learn some lessons, and we all are just like better citizens overall after this, because I really hope we learned something. But again, don't have so much faith that we will have such a long lasting memory of what needs to be done for the next time. But let's see.
Thank you. And thank you for having me on. Appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you so much. And Also, once again, thank you to Sauce for Cause and Bharth FM. Like everything we talked about, Sauce for Cause is actually running their own vaccine camps as well. If you want a vaccine, please reach out to them. They can give you more information about what they're doing. Thank you so much again to Dr. Amit Dhingra. I had such a fun conversation with you. Very no tie energy, very casual, fun. So I really loved it. Thank you for being on. And yeah, thanks so much. See you again soon.
Namaskar, Sat Sri Akal, welcome and adab. You are listening to Bharat FM, a one-of-its-kind, multilingual, eclectic provider of entertainment, information and news to Indian Americans. Headquartered in Cincinnati, Ohio, Bharat FM airs shows out of Cincinnati, Chicago and Phoenix. We take pleasure in our ability to cater to your bhakti, chusti, sfurti, shakti and masti needs with our audio and visual shows. Check out bharatfm.com for our online program schedule and archives. I'm sure the content will definitely tickle your senses. Tune in via the 24-hour web streaming on bharatfm.com or via the Bharat FM app. More information can be procured at 513-488-5070.
This is Bharat FM.
बजेगा भारत झूमेगा भारत.
ये है भारत FM.
बजेगा भारत झूमेगा भारत.